listening to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Well, it's like when we audit the mod with Logic and give them the action items that they're going to use to lower their total cost of risk.
Tactical skills that will help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Technology is not an expense, it's an investment. Look at what Think HR has done for our clients and even our team. It's an amazing product, and I'm so thankful we have that.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Things are changing for us in 2021. Not all big business anymore. Now that we have CoverWallet on our team, it's amazing that we're going to be able to write small business profitably.
This is Power Producer Shop Talk. Production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to Power Producers Shop Talk, where apparently my new guest host is Byron Felfick. You know him from Bachelor Season 2, also the Profession Bassmaster Tour. If he had it backwards, I'd call him Karch Karai, but unfortunately that's not going to happen today because I think his volleyball game is weak, even though he's looking to resurrect
you know what?
it with Maverick coming out.
I do fancy a little bit of pool volleyball. That shit is where it's at. I mean, your feet will be bleeding after the fact, but oh man, we used to do pool parties at Post Rocky Point when my buddy lived over there like 5-6 years ago. Every Saturday, they would just be out there. Pineapple Bob would be walking around with his soaked rum fruits, passing them out to everybody, and we just get after it in the pool with some volleyball. Good times.
Do not have a net in our pool. Have a basketball goal, like a legit basketball goal, not one of the crappy little pool basketball goals like the big.
Yes.
I'm like one step away from a plexiglass.
Metal rim. Yeah, right. And that's the way that you've got to do it because you want to dunk when you're in the pool. Like, I mean, just
had
shooting.
to move it to the deep end, honestly, because it just wasn't challenging enough. Well, look, let me just go ahead and I'll lay this down for you. Number one, we wanted to be able to dunk, and I was risking people ending up in a wheelchair for the rest of their life because they're like messing around in the shallow end. Number two, one side of our pool is taller than the other, and if we want to take
the shallow end
jump. No, I'm talking about the sides of the pool, like a higher height.
Gotcha.
So we jump off, when we're doing cannonballs, we jump off the high side where the waterfall is.
Yeah,
as
that makes
opposed
sense.
to the other side. But you can also jump from that and do all kinds of trick dunks from that side of it. So, and I can also attest, after watching Grayson and some of his friends get a little out of hand in the pool at 1 o'clock in the morning a few nights ago on my ADT video camera, that apparently you can hang on the rim and it's not going to fall over. So
I like that. Like that little forceful dunk, little tomahawk action. I will say that the volleyball nets in the home pools are tough because, of course, you've got the deep end, the shallow end, and that's just not going to work. This particular establishment that I was speaking of has got a pretty shallow. Yeah. So
like a lap pool.
Yeah, but massive. Anyhow.
Yeah, well, that's fine. You probably have swim meets there.
I don't know.
Something like that. So anyhow, we're going to wrap up what we were talking about on fleet safety. We talked about driver selection criteria. We talked about having a progressive disciplinary policy and a formal fleet safety policy, possibly an incentive program. But the other thing we got to talk about is training. And I think that this is something that a lot of carriers have in their arsenal, and it's good for you to use that. So for us, for me specifically, when Florida Risk launched, one of the first things that I had to do was figure out how I was going to deliver the same kind of stuff I would normally deliver without having to go invest in a bunch of stuff, in a bunch of resources.
Okay.
And so, understanding the process of me going into a middle market account and doing a baseline risk assessment and then subsequently creating the risk management plan that's going to govern that relationship for the year and assign responsibility to the agent, the carrier, a client, and then whoever third parties we're going to use is important. But I would always try and use the carrier for the fleet safety portion of it if I didn't have the ability to do it. I would be able to go in and talk workers' comp. I could talk return to work and all of that, but I just didn't want to have to do the fleet safety piece. And so I would always assign that on the risk management plan to the actual carrier that was going to write the business. As I started cash flowing and bringing more money in, I had, broker briefcase that I used at the time that had some level of training in there, where there was a PowerPoint and a test and everything else that you need to do that training live, like an attendee sign-in sheet, certificates of completion, and all of that. And this is before, at the time, this is before Zywave had a learning management system. So there wasn't even an option that I was aware of that I could do a learning management system. I did not know KPA existed, or, even if I did, I probably wouldn't have spent the money at that point in time.
Sure.
Like I do now. But I took that information and I took their PowerPoint, I took their test and everything, and I just created my own video version of it. So the problem with those longer form trainings is, especially if you're dealing with service contractors and everything else,
When are they going to do it?
you're going to go in and ask for 30 minutes to an hour.
Right.
Nothing wrong with doing it live. I encourage you to do it live so you can engage, but plan on doing that at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, because that's when they all get to the office before they get dispatched to their jobs. And that's the one time you're going to be able to get everybody in one place. And I said, you know what, this is really not going to be optimal for them or for me. Happy to do it. But I took the long form training and broke it down into 4 or 5 videos that were 20, 25 minutes. And I took the PowerPoint and did a screen record with Loom, and I did my voiceover and anecdotal stuff around that. But I did it for distracted driving, I did it for defensive driving, and I did it for one other one. I don't remember what the third one was, but it was really generic. I didn't use company names in there or anything else. I just recorded it as if I was talking first person to the audience, and then what I would do is every time I would bring a new account on, I created an intro and an outro with their logo and some, music or whatever that would welcome them. And I branded it that company name, University. And then so we started building out a training library for each one of the accounts. Obviously, at this point, we have multiple options between Mineral and KPA, depending on account size in our agency, where all of that stuff is already done. But I want people to understand you don't have to have that in place. You're not required to go spend a bunch of money. I was talking to a group about technology and agencies up in New York earlier this week at the Big Eye New York's Go Big event, and my whole talk was on using technology to influence sales. And I always start those conversations with letting people know where I came from, what I started out with, because I don't want people thinking, oh, well, this guy's got all this money invested in HubSpot and he's got tools like KPA and Mineral. Of course, you're going to go out and write business, because you've got money, the rich get richer kind of mentality. That's not the case, man. When I first started out from a tech perspective, I started out with a laptop and Microsoft Office. That was it, right?
Yeah. I mean, dude, even when I came on board, there was, we didn't have much going on in terms of the tech stuff.
We were in the throes of getting ready to move towards HubSpot and everything, but
right.
I'm going back 15, 17 years ago when I first started. I was doing the same thing that we talk about. Go to Reference USA to get demographic information. Go to sunbiz.org to get the FEIN and look and see what other things the leadership might be involved in. But that was all being done on a laptop in a spreadsheet, right? And the other thing was I would do my email marketing the same way. I would do my email marketing. I would get the email, the address from the email address from the spreadsheet. I would create the body of the email in Word, and then I would use a mail merge in Outlook to send it out to everybody. What a horribly inefficient way to do things, and I would never recommend anybody do that again. If you're that tight for money, then I don't know what to tell you. But you could go out and get an email program for like $19.99 or $29.99 a month, and you could go in and create all of your emails in that and get some level of information, of what people are clicking and opening and all of that stuff. And at least you can automate that, right? So I think about the monthly emails that we send out as part of the rolling 12-month solicitation calendar that I built and I talk about and teach in Killing Commercial. You could build that in MadMimi or MailChimp or one of those. You just create the template for each of those emails, and then if you have, then you just create lists of people based on when their renewal is, and then every month you have to manually do it, but you send that email to that list, and it's a few clicks. It's still not as nice as being able to go in and just have it automatically done by your CRM, but it's a reasonable step for you to get there. But these training programs are important, and I tell you this because it's not just because it's the right thing to do, which should be the number one reason. It's the best thing for you to do for your client or your prospect or whoever. But the other thing is, you want to document this stuff. If an underwriter says, well, they've had 3 at-fault claims over the last, 3 years. Well, this was our first year with them and they've had none. Or this is our first year with them and they've only had 1. Let me show you all of the things that we've been doing to make sure of that. Let me show you how we use a learning management system in our agency to make sure that people understand, that they're getting the training and we're documenting it and all of that.
I think that the thing that's really nice about using KPA or Mineral or really, other ones that are out there is that it pushes it out to the employees quarterly or monthly or whatever you set it up, and it shows the person in-house who's monitoring that, like if they've completed it or not, and they can follow up on it. I think it's obviously a little bit tougher to do that if you're just kind of creating something and sending it out via email and hoping that they're following through on it. But at least it's something that you're like, ultimately they've got to have some accountability too, and have got to hold their people to a standard and get it done. But you're right. At least you can show carriers, hey, look, here are some of the things that we put in place. This has been the outcome so far. And I mean, that just makes the conversations, around renewal a lot smoother. And everything with the underwriter in general. I think that's huge, but definitely the automation of how we've got it going on now, where they can get in their own learning management system and monitor that. It's slick.
Yeah, and I think that it's very, very valuable at the point of sale too. So we started these last 3 weeks worth of Shop Talk talking about a call that I had with somebody in Killing Commercial that was frustrated because they had a contentious meeting yesterday. And, the net of it when we got to the end was I finally looked at the guy and I said, you understand that there's competition in there whispering in their ear now. I said, because everything that I'm hearing that was brought up, this guy didn't just come to this conclusion overnight. Somebody's in there. I said, and listen, I said, this is right out of my playbook, man. This sounds like I'm calling on one of your accounts.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your fleet safety program. Talk to me about your fleet management system. Talk to me about your telematics. How do you use those? Tell me about your progressive disciplinary policy. Do you have a clean driving incentive program? What do you do for training? How do you document that? Where do you warehouse it? How can you be sure everybody gets through? And you just start peppering people with all of these questions, and it's it.
This is stuff that you're telling him to ask the.
Yeah, I'm telling him that this is what whoever's in there competing with him on this account
is saying these things.
Probably what they're saying, because this is exactly what I would do to you if I was calling on this account. As soon as this guy gave me any kind of an inclination at all that he would get irritated because he couldn't add drivers properly or at the rate he wanted to, I'm a dog on a bone, man. I'm going to go right down that rabbit hole, and I'm going to hammer every fleet safety question that I can. And eventually I'm going to figure out a way to tie it back to some sort of financial pain that he's having, because this is a guy that was able to articulate exactly how much revenue each one of his trucks was bringing in every year.
Wow.
If you give me that in a sales meeting, that is gold. I'm going to do the math in my head every single time to talk about how long it takes for that truck, how much money that's going to cost you when that truck is out of service, or how many trucks you have to have on the road to overcome total cost of risk and an assumed profit margin. I mean, if you've got a bunch of trucks, like this was a big fleet, and they're making $500,000 a month being on the road, that's a big operation.
For sure. Even more reason to do it the right way.
Which blew me away. It blew me away that the formality wasn't in place, but it didn't surprise me that somebody's in there snooping around, because with the types of questions and the wedges that were being driven and all of that, it let me know that it was probably a big broker, a larger broker that has all of this stuff on hand and can just go in and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And the truth is, the agent that's on this, that's my buddy, is a good agent. He has the ability to deliver a lot of this stuff. And I told him, I said, this is the problem that you run into when you deal with contractors like this. I said, I've dealt with this firsthand. You have all of the toys in the toy box. They don't want anything to do with them. They don't even want you to talk about them because they're so focused on growing top-line revenue and just getting jobs done. And then they act like they've never heard you talk about it before because somebody else comes in and they talk about what they can do to solve an immediate problem when you've had the solution the entire time. The way you need to solve this is you've got to get in, and that's when I sort of went into the mirroring and the labeling piece that we talked about earlier. I said, but you got to get in, you've got to let this person voice their concerns and get it off their chest and get it out there so that you can say, hey, look, I realized that at the time I mentioned this to you, you were in high growth mode, and it seems like now you have a lot more time to focus on some of the profitability issues and things that are driving costs inside the operation. Would it be crazy if we revisit some of the stuff that I can do for you? Because it appears you don't realize I have these capabilities based on what you're saying, right?
That's good.
And I think it's important that you do that. Now, when I get up and talk and I talk about mirroring and labeling and all of that, I always tell people, and there's people who have heard me speak publicly that are already just chomping at the bit to criticize me for putting I into that conversation. I did that intentionally. So when you're mirroring and labeling somebody as a prospect, you always want to say it sounds like, it feels like, it seems like, not I'm hearing, I'm feeling, or whatever. Because the second you put I into the conversation, it becomes selfish and about you and not about them. And most producers already have a problem with making the conversation about them instead of the prospect. So you don't want to do that. In this situation, I specifically used I because this is about me. This is about my capability and the fact that this person doesn't remember it. And I want them to think about, okay, now he's talking about himself. I don't want there to be any lack of clarity whatsoever as to what we're able to deliver when I start laying it down. But there's no excuse. Every single person out there has the ability to start doing this for their client, whether you use the carrier resources, whether you do the things that I did where I just created my own videos and then was able to do an intro and an outro for each time I brought a new client on, or whether you go out and you use a Mineral or a KPA or whoever else that's out there that's got a good learning management system and you use them to do this stuff. The problem is agents see this as a way to get business. They don't view it as a way to keep business.
It. Yeah.
They want to promise. They're no different than the payroll reps. They go out and they promise it at the point of sale, but then nobody ever uses the HR function, and it becomes this sort of, cast thing that's cast aside, and people don't even realize they have the 800 number they can call for Ask an Expert or any of this other stuff when, we just drill that home as much as we possibly can. And you know what? It works, right? That's why when I go into an appointment, I tell them I'm the guy that delivers what everybody else has promised you. Period. Here's how we do it. We have this system, and here's who you're going to be accountable to in my organization to make sure you use this system. I mean, we picked up a multi-million-dollar account at the end of 2021 going into 2022, and it was because we have that system. And guess what? A lot of people in my ecosystem have benefited from us getting that account because it allowed me to bring in my benefits and 401k guy. It allowed me to bring in my payroll people. And now, all of a sudden, we've got this thing running like a pretty fine-tuned machine because they listened and we weren't just promising to do it. They figured out pretty quickly after the first meeting that when I laid out what KPA does and everything else, that we were serious about using it in their operation, because I had Nicole on the phone with them every single day doing the discovery checklist, building the different modules out. And guess what? We recorded about a 12-minute video of our custom build out of their risk management center. And we sent that to underwriting to get the workers' comp placed so that they could see we had the controls that were necessary. Doing the training's one thing. Having it documented is something completely different, and that's where I think a lot of people lose out is the agency doesn't have it. The client might have it, but when the client's responsible for it, a lot of times if you're not going in and reviewing those records, it's shoddy at best.
Yep.
Do this stuff as part of your value prop for your agency. Not only are you going to write business leading with it, but you're going to retain the accounts you have by simply providing the service that you promised to when you wrote it. That's all I got, man. We're going into Memorial Day weekend. We talked about doing an episode number 4. It ain't happening today. I wrote down the topic. I'll deal with it next week because, like I said, it's Memorial Day weekend. I've been gone.
Dude, you've been a freaking absolute you're on tour, really.
I know. It's been crazy, and I don't like it that much. I mean, I enjoy spending the time with everybody and getting up and talking.
I hate
don't
traveling.
Like being away from.
Oh, God, it's terrible, dude.
Home.
No,
yeah,
it's
unless I'm traveling to Key West June 23rd through 27th with a group of just animal insurance agents who don't know how to behave when they get out of their house.
It's gonna be wild,
Doug
man.
Benz, I'm talking to you.
Doug Benz.
Talking to you, Benz.
I'm telling you, man. I just need to go ahead and get a house down. I don't think I told you this part, but I've got another buddy that's getting married that's doing his bachelor party there in November. So I've got 23rd through the 27th. Coming home for 2 or 3 days, and then I've got my one buddy's bachelor party, like that first week in July. Then we've got a trip with the in-laws in August to Key West, and then come back in November. I just need to go ahead and get a little bungalow down there.
Yeah, bungalow away. I'll let you determine which side of the rainbow crosswalk you want that to be on. All right, man. Have a good Memorial Day weekend, everybody. You're going to hear this long after the fact, but hopefully these last 3 episodes will help some of you that have been struggling with the current environment of auto to figure out some things you can use at the point of sale to drive business and things to figure out in your service pipeline to keep business. Until next week, see ya.
You've been listening to Power Producers Shop Talk. You can follow us at the Power Producers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our commercial insurance training course at killingcommercial.com or visit Amazon to pick up a copy of our international best-selling book, The Extra 2 Minutes.